Some have said that America has no culture, but this is obviously problematic and untrue, right? When we tell the history of the piano, it's often a very Eurocentric story, which makes sense since so many of the legends and pioneers and composers that we love, as well as the instrument itself, come from the old world. But as I'm learning more and more, pianists from the United States have had a huge impact on the history of piano and piano music over the past couple of centuries. I'm Robert Fleitz from Tonebase, and over the past several months, I've been compiling a list of notable pianists from each and every state, as well as Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, in order to paint a colorful landscape of the diverse pianism of the United States. Now, for algorithmic purposes, I am probably going to title this video something like The Best Pianist from Each State. But let's not think of it as the best pianist from each state, but rather a list of pianists that represent the entirety of the United States and all that United States piano history has to offer us. Also, for the purposes of this video, I've decided to focus on pianists who were born in the United States, which of course inevitably excludes so many incredible pianists who immigrated to the United States, made this country their home, and made a lasting impact on the musical landscape of this country. But that's a topic for another video. Finally, I mostly had pianists represent the state that they were born in, but there are a few pianists who just so much embody the spirit of a different state that I put them there instead. Be sure to stick around for your state, and please tell me who I'm missing. I'm sure that there are some absolutely phenomenal pianists that I just couldn't find information about, and I would love to hear from all of you. If you're watching from somewhere outside of the US, howdy y'all, welcome, and please let me know where you're tuning in from. But before we get started, I have one more small request. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to check out Tonebase Premium, where pianists from all over the United States and the world present their insights on fabulous piano repertoire. Tonebase Premium is the site that makes videos like this possible. So, without further ado, let's go. Louisiana, Louis Moreau Gottschalk. The history of classical piano in the United States arguably began in New Orleans with the birth of Louis Moreau Gottschalk in 1829. He became the first really notable American concert pianist, touring the United States, Europe, and South America during his lifetime. He even played for Chopin. He's especially known for his compositions, which have a unique blend of local American musical styles with European classical idioms. There's so much that could be said about Gottschalk that he really deserves his own video, but I can definitely say here that his strange, eclectic, and complicated biography feels really quintessentially American. Indiana, Jonathan Bis. Bis is an acclaimed pianist renowned for his insightful interpretations of Beethoven, as well as his chamber music collaborations with many musicians, including the one and only Mitsuko Uchida. He is also admired for his eloquence as a writer. New Jersey. Seymour Bernstein. From New Jersey, we have the legendary pianist, musical commentator, teacher, movie star, and social media influencer, Seymour Bernstein. His acute pedagogical observations and his wonderful musical spirit have made him a fan favorite on Tonebase and around the world. Colorado, John Browning. This accomplished pianist, a student of Rosina Levine, was one of the few winners of the notorious Leventritt competition and left a huge legacy in the history of American classical music when he became the brave soul to premiere the piano concerto of Samuel Barber. Ohio, Art Tatum. Born in Toledo, Art Tatum is pretty much universally recognized as one of the greatest jazz legends of all time.
Vladimir Horowitz and Rachmaninoff would go down and hear Art Tatum play. And Horowitz was so impressed with him that he apparently spent about 6 or 8 months preparing an arrangement of Tea for Two, and then invited Tatum to his house on 94th Street in New York and says, "Mr. Tatum, I want to play this arrangement. I worked on it so hard." So Horowitz did his thing, played Tea for Two, and then Tatum said, "Yeah, that's pretty good, Mr. Horowitz. Can I try it?" And he sat down and played exactly what Horowitz had just played. And Horowitz was, no, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. How do you do that?" You know, another example of a genius with an incredible ear and a facility that goes beyond anything you can teach.
California, Leon Fleisher. It's hard to overstate Fleischer's impact on piano music in the United States. He struggled for decades with focal dystonia, a condition that left him unable to use his right hand. However, throughout his career, he left a legacy of musically rich recordings, and he's shared his musical wisdom with generations of students.
You will never get the answer until you listen to what you do, until you really hear the music and make a decision, make a choice for what you want to hear, for what you think the music is saying. It's all so much more in your hands than you think.
South Dakota, Abby Whiteside. Though often neglected today, Whiteside developed her own school of piano technique built on the idea of a basic emotional rhythm.
By letting the rhythm be the guide, our attention is liberated from an excessive preoccupation with the minute details of the music.
Her books, Mastering the Chopin Etudes and Indispensables of Piano Playing, are still super helpful resources for piano technique. Alabama, Julian Martin. Julian Martin was my piano teacher for 6 years, and he was an incredible part of my musical development. I learned so much about what I know about the piano from him. He continues to inspire his students at Juilliard and elsewhere with his witty musical insights and his acute technical wisdom. Maine, Henry Kramer. One of Julian Martin's other students is Henry Kramer, a highly successful pianist known for poetic interpretations and marvelous technique. He's a prize winner of several international competitions, including Queen Elizabeth and Honen's, and works often as a chamber musician and educator. Illinois, Rosalind Turek. Glenn Gould once claimed that Chicago-born Turek was the only pianist that he admired. Her incredible and unique career was defined by being the high priestess of Bach, performing almost exclusively Bach's works. Inventive and endlessly creative, she often performed Bach's work on a variety of instruments, including the Moog synthesizer and even the theremin.
Bach's genius was what is usually called of a universal kind. His genius generated so many ideas that there are portions of his work that sound like the work of later composers. And this is most suitable to the avant-garde instrument, the polymoog.
Rhode Island, Wendy Carlos. The smallest state in the Union brought us Wendy Carlos, who made history on one of the smallest keyboard instruments, the Moog synthesizer. On it, she recorded Switched on Bach, in which she plays Bach's keyboard works on the electronic instrument. That was just the beginning of a long career that included lots of experimentation with electronic instruments and composition. Connecticut, Charles Ives. Ives was a quintessentially American musician. A pianist, composer, accomplished athlete, and very successful insurance salesman, he was steeped in diverse musical traditions from a young age. Sacred music, folk music, band music, classical music, you name it. His revolutionary brand of modernism is still provocative and groundbreaking to this day, and his nearly impossible second piano sonata, the Concord Sonata, remains a kind of legendary Goliath of the piano repertoire.
He wrote what he wanted, with really no regard for pianistic difficulty whatsoever. There was a complete lack of self-censorship in this case, and I find that very refreshing.
Virginia, Bruce Hornsby. Ives was a big inspiration to Bruce Hornsby, as we can hear in this little number. Born in Williamsburg, Virginia, Hornsby's pop rock compositions put the piano at the center and are probably some of the catchiest American piano licks that I have heard in my lifetime. Florida. Me! I'm just kidding. I was born and raised in Florida, therefore I know that right now that there are some incredible pianists playing, teaching, and working there. But for today, I'd love to highlight Michelle Cann, who is on the faculty at the Curtis Institute. You can check out some of her lessons on Tonebase Premium on works by Chopin as well as Florence Price. Speaking of the accomplished pianist and composer Florence Price, she became the first African-American composer to have work premiered by a major American orchestra. Her music combines the neo-romanticism of the 1930s and 40s with the sensibility of the Harlem Renaissance and beyond. Thankfully, her music is getting a lot more attention these days, and her piano sonata is an absolute gem of the repertoire.
She likes to just kind of go off into fantasy worlds and go off into different keys, kind of whenever it makes sense to her. And that's what I love. I feel that her writing is so honest. Whenever you're coming from a place of sincerity and honesty, both as a performer and as a composer, then it will be convincing.
Delaware, Matthew Shipp. This maverick Wilmington-born improviser has had a prolific career of recording and performing avant-garde free jazz. His idiosyncratic style has earned him a great deal of respect in his field and a cult following of listeners. Maryland, Sarah Davis Buchner. Born in Baltimore, Sarah Davis Buchner is a prolific pianist and powerful personality in the world of classical music. She's recorded tons of repertoire from Gershwin to Busoni and beyond, and her courses on Tonebase Premium are really worth checking out. In fact, she has a new course on the platform called The School of Virtuosity, which is just full of incredible tips for bringing your piano playing to the next level.
And technique takes many forms. It's not only using the fingers, or using the arms, using the shoulders, using the entire body. It's also using our mind and using our heart. How does piano technique relate to those concepts as well?
Check it out by clicking the link in the description below or right up here. New Hampshire, Amy Beach. Although nowadays we mostly think of Amy Beach as being one of the New England romantics, much like Edward McDowell, for example, she actually achieved a great deal of success as a virtuosic concert pianist in her lifetime. Born in New Hampshire, she went on to have a really incredible career spanning both this continent as well as Europe. Although, of course, we have no recordings of her playing, we can kind of get a glimpse of that virtuosity in her wonderful and often complex piano music. Utah, the 5 Browns. Perhaps it's cheating to choose 5 pianists to represent one state, but the 5 Browns are an absolutely fabulous group of Juilliard-trained siblings who have taken this country by storm with their fiery performances. Seeing one of their performances as a teenager was one of the reasons that I became a pianist. Nebraska, Roger Williams. Williams was a hugely successful recording artist born in Omaha, whose version of Autumn Leaves sold over 2 million copies, making it one of the best-selling solo piano recordings of all time to this day. He played at the White House for 9 presidents, performed for several film soundtracks, and owned a solid gold Steinway, which is kind of slay. Nevada, Liberace. Speaking of slay, next up we have Liberace, who was probably one of the most iconic American pianists of all time. Known for his showmanship, technique, sparkling personality, and his flamboyant costumes, he pioneered the style of over-the-top concert residencies which define the modern-day Las Vegas Strip. Kansas, Stan Kenton. Kenton, born in Wichita, was a hugely successful Grammy-winning jazz pianist who was most known for his work as a band leader and arranger. His arrangements often utilized lush orchestrations and characteristically bold and brash brass. Minnesota, Kenneth Broberg. A recent medalist in both the Tchaikovsky and the Van Cliburn competitions, as well as many others, the young Minneapolis native Kenneth Broberg is certainly on his way to a long and illustrious career. Massachusetts, Leonard Bernstein. I mean, it's Leonard Bernstein. Need I say more? Georgia, Mary Lou Williams. Though she was already playing with bands and giving solo concerts as young as 12 years old, the jazz pianist Mary Lou Williams, who was born in 1910 in Atlanta, found her greatest success later in life. An incredible composer, she wrote some large-scale jazz compositions and is known to this day for her unique style of swing piano playing, as well as her pedagogy of some of the great figures of jazz music. Oregon, Thomas Lauderdale. Lauderdale is the band leader for the hugely successful group Pink Martini, which has sold millions of albums worldwide. He's active as a pianist across genres, as well as an activist in his longtime home of Portland. Idaho, Lamont Young. This idiosyncratic and mysterious composer was born in Bern, Idaho, and is especially known for his interest in alternate tuning systems. He took these tuning systems to the extreme with his 6-hour-long piano piece, The Well-Tuned Piano, which he performed himself, written in an intonation system that he himself devised. West Virginia, George Crumb. The wonderful composer George Crumb really revolutionized using all the other parts of the instrument to make sounds, treating the piano more like a percussion instrument than a keyboard instrument. These techniques are not just special effects, but instead they create disturbing, deep, and emotional sonic worlds in which the identity of American culture is explored and probed in a really interesting way, such as in his American songbooks or in his magnum opus, the solo piano piece Macrocosmos. Puerto Rico, Jesus Maria San Roma. A prolific figure whose legacy is quite unknown today, San Roma was born in Puerto Rico and went on to study with such legendary figures as Arthur Schnabel and Alfred Cortot. He was the official pianist of the Boston Symphony for almost 2 decades, where he recorded many of the great works for piano and orchestra. His legacy remains in the Puerto Rico Conservatory, which he helped to found. Oklahoma, Lewis Ballard. Ballard was a Quapaw Cherokee composer who spent his life trying to undo negative musical stereotypes of Native American music, crafting a musical language that instead combined indigenous music with Western styles without reducing either of their identities. An accomplished pianist, he wrote a great deal of piano music and premiered much of it himself. Perhaps his most famous piano work is his 4 American Indian preludes, which were heavily praised by the composer Darius Milhaud. Missouri, Dominic Chailey. Dominic is an acclaimed performer and recording artist who is particularly interested in engaging his music with his surrounding community. As the head of piano at Tonebase, you can get a glimpse of his unique artistic spirit in his lessons and community forums. Wisconsin, Lynn Ariel. One of the most acclaimed jazz pianists currently working, Ariel has performed at festivals around the world, released 16 albums, and won several awards for her generous playing. She's also a committed educator to the next generation of jazz artists.
I love performing. I think it's a great way to spend a life, to play music, and to play jazz especially.
Alaska, Susan Wingrove Reed. Susan Reed is a fiercely committed educator and collaborator in her home state of Alaska. I've had the opportunity to see Susan in action at the Sitka Fine Arts Camp and at the Sitka Chamber Music Festival. So I know her work is inspiring countless new generations of musicians in Alaska, from the biggest cities to the smallest villages. Pennsylvania, Keith Jarrett. Jarrett is a versatile musician of boundless genius that transcends genre. His recordings as a jazz pianist and improviser are highly influential masterpieces of the 20th and 21st centuries. Not only that, but he's made a strong impact as a performer of the classical repertoire, as well as a composer. He got his start as a prodigious kid in Allentown, Pennsylvania, but his work resonates all around the world. South Carolina, Escarida. Though relatively unknown today, this self-taught pianist and singer got his start playing gospel music in his native South Carolina. He went on to make a name for himself as a flamboyant rocker at the keys.
I was taught how to play piano by Escarida. He got his hairstyle from me. That's right. But he taught me how to play piano.
North Dakota, Frank Scott. Depending on when you grew up, you may have spent a lot of time watching The Lawrence Welk Show, or like me, watching it with your grandparents.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's The Lawrence Welk Show.
Scott, born in Fargo, was a frequent guest and musical arranger on the show, where he performed as a pianist, organist, and harpsichordist. New Mexico, John Lewis. This great jazz pianist spent most of his young life in Albuquerque, and is known for his fusion of classical and Baroque forms into his jazz performances. Mississippi, Hank Jones. A good friend of John Lewis was Hank Jones, an illustrious jazz pianist known for his rich tone and wide-ranging musical explorations. Andre Previn called him his favorite pianist regardless of idiom. His long and wide-reaching career began when he worked as a bandleader for CBS, later recording several albums under his own name with intriguing combinations of jazz with string quartet, African drums, and more. Incredibly, he was also the pianist for Marilyn Monroe when she sang Happy Birthday to John F. Kennedy. Okay, so one thing that I learned when doing this project is that most of the classical pianists that you can think of that come from the United States were born in New York or spent a lot of time there. That is obviously a really concentrated hub of classical music in the US. It was really hard to narrow it down just to one, but I've chosen the fabulous and legendary Garrick Ohlsson. Ohlsson is a treasure of American classical piano, and I really just enjoy listening to him talk about music, not to mention his incredible recordings. And we're really lucky because he's recorded a ton of content for Tonebase Premium, which you can find by clicking the link in the description below.
Very often people give up from difficult things because it's not convenient, it doesn't feel good, it's not easy, it doesn't go well. Learn to do what doesn't go easily, because in learning all that, you're going to learn a lot of basic principles. Principles that will serve you for the rest of your life and everything else you play.
Michigan, Jerry Allen. Detroit-born Jerry Allen is recognized as one of the true geniuses of modern jazz history, a trailblazer who combined the avant-garde with traditional styles in her solo and collaborative performances. Kentucky, B.G. Adair. Born and raised in Kentucky, this jazz pianist is beloved around the world for her lush, approachable, and accessible style, which she refined over a long and storied career of countless recordings, collaborations, and performances. Wyoming, Richard Kermode. It's hard to find out a lot about Richard Kermode, but he was the keyboardist for some really psychedelic acts, such as Janis Joplin and Santana. Washington, Charlie Albright. Albright is a prodigious pianist, composer, and improviser who has already performed with most of the world's greatest musicians in most of the world's greatest concert halls. In addition to his incredible playing, he's known for his engaging and fun performance style. Arizona, Connor Chi. In his work, the Navajo pianist and composer Connor Chi brings together the music of the first inhabitants of this country with his own prodigious classical training. This results in lush and beautiful piano music that is totally worth adding to the repertoire. Washington, D.C. Sarah Cahill. Cahill was born in DC and has played a huge history in the development of piano music in the United States for the past several decades. She's commissioned and premiered works by such important composers as John Adams, Frederick Rzewski, Julia Wolfe, and Pauline Oliveros. Vermont, Adam Tendler. Tendler is a champion of new American music and is particularly known for his incredible interpretations of John Cage. He's also especially appropriate for this video as he is known for a tour of all 50 states that he did in his early career. Iowa, Bruce Brubaker. Another titan of the US contemporary music scene, Iowa-born Bruce Brubaker is known for his innovative repertoire and his collaborations with American composers such as Philip Glass and Meredith Monk. His distinct programming spans everything from Bach to Brahms to improvisations and electronics. North Carolina, Nina Simone. This legend of soul music started her incredible career as a classically trained pianist. Her mastery of the instrument and her unforgettable voice, as well as her deep commitment to the civil rights movement, contributed to her lasting impact on America's musical and cultural history.
The tone, the nuances, the implications, the silences, the dynamics, the pianissimos, the fortissimos, all have to do with sound and music, and it's as close to God as I know. Bach was a master.
Montana, Melita True. True was born in Bozeman and became a longtime faculty member at the Eastman School of Music. She was sought after around the world as a beloved piano professor, masterclass instructor, and competition juror. Tennessee, Hargis Pig Robbins. This titan of country music, born in Nashville, who was incidentally also blind, was a renowned session musician, having recorded keyboards on tracks by Dolly Parton, Shania Twain, Patsy Cline, Bob Dylan, Kenny Rogers, and countless others, in addition to his own solo recordings.
When I ask for pig, I want pig. Now you get me pig, and then we'll be ready to record this here too.
Hawaii, Betty Lou Taylor. Known as Hawaii's first lady of jazz, pianist Betty Lou Taylor was an icon of the state's jazz scene for decades until her death in 2016. Texas, Van Cliburn.
Who's Van Cliburn?
Texas's own Van Cliburn is a classical pianist. We share a birthday.
Cliburn changed the future of American piano music forever when he won the Tchaikovsky competition in Moscow in 1958. Although he was born in Louisiana, Cliburn's massive sound and his grand interpretations are more suited to his later home of Texas. His huge impact in this state and beyond is still with us in the form of one of the world's most prestigious piano competitions, the Cliburn.
I heard Van a number of times and I never heard an ugly sound come out of the piano. It was always huge. I mean, he had this huge sonority. You know, it was like steel wrapped in velvet. He grew up in a choir. You can hear the choir. He was the kind of human being that would give his last shirt to help you out. I mean, he was that kind of soul. And I think that came through in his playing.
Wow, so thank you so much for sticking around this long. I had a really fun time researching this video. I learned so much about so many musicians who I knew nothing about before, and I got a chance to really explore the expansiveness of the history of piano music in the United States. At the same time, I recognize that I'm just one person, and although I tried to do my best with the research, I know that I missed a ton of pianists because I know how many people I had to leave in the editing room before choosing who to include on this list. So tell me what state you come from and who are the most important pianists in your home state. I would love to get to know them, and I'd love to get to know more about where this audience is located. And remember that a lot of the pianists that we spoke about today have lessons and content on Tonebase Premium, an incredible platform that makes videos like this possible. Be sure to check it out by clicking the link in the description below or by looking right up here. I'm Robert Fleitz from Tonebase, looking forward to catching up next time. See ya! Florida. Me! Florida. Me! Florida. Me!